Well, hello everyone. Ogre27 Kane here today, and I think we're going to do the next episode of 10 Great Switch Titles, Part 4, the Merge and Humble Games Edition. So this is a list of Merge and Humble published games, my personal little collection of 10 different titles. There's a couple first-person shooters, some roguelikes, some Metroidvanias, and some RPGs. A little bit of everything in here. I hope you find a game you enjoy. This list is in by no way, shape, or form in any particular order, and none of these games are ranked higher than any of the others. I enjoyed all of them. So let's get started. So starting out at number 10, we have Skull, the Hero Slayer. And this is a roguelike very much in the vein of something like Dead Cells, but it has a screen-to-screen, as you see right here. The area's environments are not very big, and you do most all of your little battling in these tiny little platforming sections. But that doesn't take anything away from it. It's a fantastic little roguelike, and it has a lot of great other elements involved. The key to this game is discovering new skulls, new heads that you can put on, and upgrading those skulls. As you play through, you'll gain new abilities and powers and meet new friends that will help you along your way in your journey. The thing about this game is that the combat and ability synergies are so different and varied that you can literally never ever have the same playthrough every time you play through it if you want. On the other hand, if you choose to go a certain path and build a certain way, you can follow that path for the most part too. Because of this variation though, it really does change how you play each playthrough. You'll never ever get to play it the same way. This doesn't bother me at all, but it makes it so you are forced to learn each skull and how they work and how they function and what synergies work with each one of them. The last thing I'm going to mention is that this game is really hard, so brace yourself for a long game. Next up, we have number 9, Dead Cells. Well, I hate to say it, but if you don't know about Dead Cells by this point, you've probably been living under a rock. This game has been out for quite a while and received a ton of updates, the most recent update being the Castlevania one. I've purchased all of the other DLCs and updates and played most of it through, but I have not gotten to this newest Castlevania one. I will hopefully when I get another moment and I get some of my backlog taken care of. But in the meantime, enjoy the footage from this game because I still play the main game through all the time and I enjoy this a lot. It has a lot of Metroidvania type elements to it, but it's not really a true Metroidvania. It is pretty much a platformer at heart, and it really desires you to use the combat and synergies within this game to figure out how to get through it. You don't necessarily need to know how to be good at Metroidvanias or know a lot about puzzle solving, but you do need to be quick on your feet with reaction time and understanding how a lot of these abilities fit together. So very much similar to Skull, this game is dependent on each weapon and each upgrade and how you go about your path as you play each playthrough. You'll almost never get the same playthrough unless you set it up in a custom mode, so enjoy the difficulty and enjoy the variation to this game because it will teach you a lot about yourself. So let's move on to the next game now. So here at number 8, we have Darkest Dungeon, and this is a roguelike dungeon crawler RPG. And it has a lot of really fun elements to it. The game is really addicting and will hook you, but it also has probably some of the most frustrating elements to it as well. You'll spend a lot of time upgrading a particular character or unit or group, and you'll design a lot of elements and strategy around this to get through particular areas, only to have it all fall apart with one stupid enemy killing or stressing out one of your characters and ruining the whole party makeup. It's part of the gameplay element to this, but if you don't enjoy having to rebuild constantly, this may not be the roguelike for you. It's a very, very difficult game, very punishing game, but very rewarding game at the very same time. The other element to this game is the story, and the story goes pretty deeply. As you play through each area in each dungeon, beat each boss in each area, you'll get another tidbit and piece to it. At first you don't really know what's going on, but as you figure it out and you realize that the Lord of the Mansion is basically just using you as puppets to do what you need to do to fix whatever he's done wrong, it kinda embitters you at a certain point. Well, I'm not going to spoil too much more about that, so I think we should move on to the next game, our number 7, Children of Morta. So I have a special guest with me on this one, my daughter, Froggo14, as every time I've ever played this game, I've played it through with her, and we've had a lot of fun together, so I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about it. Well, share your thoughts, Froggo.
The fantasy aspect is cool, and I love the animals in this dungeon crawler.
Who is your favorite character?
Lucy.
How come?
You can attack from far away.
What, do you have anything else you want to share?
This game is fun. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Froggo. I really appreciate your input. So this game is pretty much tried and true in RPG. It does have a few roguelike elements to it, such as when you die in a dungeon, you may lose your currency, and it has static areas that you can go back to, and they're all randomly generated each time you go through it. But it's still the same area, and it still has the same bosses and the same enemies. You still have the same goal, and it is very much an RPG. I really enjoy the fact that me and my daughter can simultaneously work on our character, and that our characters grow independently of each other if we were to ever play independently. We can also change it up and add in different characters to vary our gameplay. Me and my daughter have put a lot of time in this game, and we really enjoyed it. So I hope you check this game out because it's a little older now and it's kind of a hidden gem. So let's move on now to our next game. So here, coming up at the next spot on the list, a little bit different game. We're going with number 6, Moonscars. And this is a Metroidvania with a lot of Dark Souls elements to it. It's very difficult, but very rewarding. I highly enjoyed my time with this game, and I did a review on my channel if you'd like to see more. This game's pretty dark and foreboding, but the atmosphere fits well with the art style, and the character and how she reacts to the world itself. This game has a ton of elements also designed to keep the difficulty high, such as every time you open up a fast travel point, there's a chance that sacrificing your body might create a doppelganger that you'll go back and have to fight, like a midway boss. Some people don't really like this aspect, but I thought it was kind of fun because it adds a little bit of an edge to it, and it gives you a little bit of an experience bump. Yeah, you really need to level up in this game because the enemies are difficult, the strategies are difficult, the timing is difficult, but all of it culminates in a fantastic package, and it's worth its price. It's fairly cheap still right now, and it probably will be a pretty valuable game here in the future, as I don't see it having a very large print run. One of the only frustrating aspects to this game is that the frame rate does have a tendency to tank when you get a lot of enemies on screen. I briefly touch on this in my review, but it's only really frustrating when you have an enemy that can create more enemies. There are some enemies that will just flood the screen with it and drive you crazy. So let's move on now to our next game. Our number 5 game, Ghostsong. Now this is a game that I picked up a while ago and just put into my backlog, not really thinking about it. I had heard some good things and I knew that it would probably be a short print run as well, so I picked it up brand new. It's sat in my backlog for a while and I've only recently started playing it through. This has turned into one of my favorite Metroidvanias of this generation, simply because the whole feeling and atmosphere of this game is like if you took Super Metroid and mixed in Dark Souls elements to it. Yes, I know it's an overused trope, the whole dropping your currency and having to go back to it, but there's a certain amount of suspense that leads into it, and there are ways of recuperating your losses. One aspect about this game that's hard for people to get into is the fact that it has a really difficult beginning to it. But I recommend you stick with it because after you get your second upgrade and you start really understanding the movement and momentum of this world, when you start understanding the combat, not only do you have a ranged weapon, but you also have melee weapons you can equip that are all different and varied as well. You have a stamina gauge, which of course manages all this for you, but your weapons are all independent through independent stats, and that's what you level up. I don't want to give away too much more, but I do plan to do a full review on this game when I finish it. So let's move on to the next one now. Number 4, Signalis. Now once again, this is another game I have reviewed on my channel, and if you want to see more about this, I highly recommend checking that video out, as I show a lot more of the gameplay style off itself. This is a pixel art top-down Resident Evil style clone, yes you heard me, but with a sci-fi aesthetic to it. It has some really deep and engaging thought to it as well, and there's a ton of psychological thriller mixed in with it too. The other really cool thing is because of the art style they've chosen, it allows them to throw it back and really utilize the scary features of the original Resident Evil games. Utilizing fixed environments and hiding enemies within those environments really leads for a creepy atmosphere. You think you can see the whole screen, but you never really can. And it leads to a lot of tension within the game as well. The other thing I want to mention is that the physical version of this game features a Polaroid in it, with a bit of a spoiler inside. Once you play the entire game through and you understand who the characters are, and you go back and look at that Polaroid, I think it's a pretty cool little Easter egg that they did there. With all that being said, I think this little 10 to 15 hour adventure is totally worth your time, and I hope you help me support this little independent developer so they can create something else great. Let's move on now to our next one. So in at number 3, we have another game that I've reviewed on my channel. This is a pixel art first-person shooter, but it's pretty unique. It has a lot of options as far as varying your control and changing up the art style and visual appeal of the game. I love when a game offers you a ton of options and allows you to make things more towards the direction of what you like to look at. This is a bit of a Doom clone, but probably the best one I've ever played in all honesty. It has a map too that allows you to go back and forth between areas and uncover secrets. It's a pretty interactive map too, with shops and other things. It almost reminds me of an RPG in a bit of a way. There's a lot of other really cool upgrades and secrets hidden within every level, and it really makes you want to play it over and over. On top of that, the immense blood and gore and violence in the environment seems like it might put you off, but it actually adds to some of the excitement and hype. The game really pushes you to keep going and keep your movement and your energy fast. This is definitely probably the best first-person shooter on the Switch in my opinion, and one that if you're a fan of the genre, you absolutely cannot miss. Once again though, as with most of the games on this list, it is a small print run, and it's probably going to be fairly expensive in the future. So if this game looks appealing, check it out. Let's move on to the next one now. Number 2, Void Bastards. So this is a roguelike first-person shooter, and probably my second favorite first-person shooter on the Switch. The comedy in this game is absolutely off the wall and hilarious. It's almost like English humor, but it's definitely crazy. It's got its American touches to it. The combat in this game is a little different though than what you'd expect from most first-person shooters, as you do have some traditional style weapons, but you also have some very unique weapons in this game. You have things like a kitty cat bomb that goes out and blows stuff up, cluster bombs. As you can see here, I have an automatic stapler. You have a pistol is pretty much your only traditional weapon, but everything else is something completely off the wall. The art style in this is also set up like a comic book and really lends itself to the comedy itself within the game. So whether you can believe it or not though, the story in between the areas is even crazier. You're essentially just a bunch of prisoners on board a prison ship that gets lost out in space, and you're sent out independently to help find parts to rebuild the ship to get you back to the main prison. That's right, you're basically a clone prisoner trying to save your other clone prisoners to lock them back up in prison. It's a pretty outrageous story with a lot of silly elements. So let's move on to our next game. Well, at our final and number 1 spot, we have Slay the Spire. Well, this is a card-based, turn-based, dungeon crawler roguelike RPG. Yep, it's got a lot of elements to it, and it's really hard to explain. But all of those elements function really well, and the game is super addictive. After you do your first run and you get your first batch of good cards, it will hook you and make you want to play over and over. The other thing is that for a roguelike, it doesn't have a lot of elements that change necessarily each playthrough, but rather how you play through with the cards. The enemies themselves are the same enemies, and the bosses are in the same places, but you'll have a different deck of cards and a different setup each time you play it. So you may know how to beat that enemy, but you may not have the right setup. Or you may not have any idea how to beat that enemy and go in and slaughter the entire thing. This game has so many different rogue elements to it that it will frustrate you, drive you crazy, and keep you hooked all at the same time. I'll be honest, for as much time as I've put in this game, I have never slayed the Spire. I have never been to the top. I've only been about 3/4 of the way through it, and a lot of the cards I've found are pretty interesting and unique. So, I keep trying. This will probably end up on one of my top 10 most played games lists, as I could see myself probably putting 200 or 300 hours into this over a long period of time. That'll do it. Thank you for watching today's video. It was a blast to make. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day. This is Ogre27 Kane signing out.